Come on honey, you said you were going to be ready a half hour ago. We need to get going, Glenn said to Debbie. Glenn's wife cringed hearing those words. She hated that he was always in a hurry. Why couldn't her husband take life nice and slow like she did? It would be fine. They will meet up with their friends at the restaurant when they get there. She also hated to be rushed. She had all the time in the world. Each time he is in a hurry, Debbie would think that maybe he would not be getting on her all the time if he knew how long it took her to get ready. Then came the next thought of, was it worth the headache to teach him a lesson? She decided it was not worth the headache. Debbie replied back, Glenn, maybe I should show you exactly why it takes me so long, and then you would quit getting on me about taking so long to get ready. Glenn thought to himself, why does she think me wanting to leave someone on time is somehow getting on her for how long she takes to get ready? He replied, Dear, we are going to be over an half-hour late. I am not getting on you about how long it takes to get ready. I am bringing up we are running late. Hearing Glenn trying to deny what he was doing made Debbie change her mind. It was worth the headache to teach him a lesson. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. She then started to unweave the strands of time and space she saw, with her third eye, all around her. Debbie was a wizard and she was going to transform her husband into a woman for the night. This was so he would understand why she always took so long to get ready. It was harmless in her eyes, for she was going to make sure she added a charm to the spell to make him enjoy it. She also was going to alter her friends' reactions so to them so Glenn being a woman would be normal. After she got the strands unraveled to where she could start her spell, they kept on unraveling. The strands which were connected to her started to unravel also. She started to panic, for a more powerful wizard had to be working their magic as a counterspell to hers. There was no other explanation. The panic-stricken wizard could think of why this was happening. She threw salt all around her to form a protective magic circle. The mage hoped it would buy her some time so she could go on the counter-offensive from the sneak attack on her. She did not know who would do such a thing. It is a high crime for a wizard to attack another wizard at their home, and the judicators would most definitely go after the offender, to bring them to justice. She could not think of any practitioner of magic who was foolish enough to want to bring the wrath of the judicators onto themselves to go after her. The salt quickly dispersed. The makeshift magic circle did not work. She knew it was useless to throw any more. She quickly came up with a backup plan, cut herself off from the weave and then make a different connection. The strands she was working on were for transformation, to change Glenn into a woman. So by the nature of transformation magic, that would be easy. It dealt with change, and there are many different ways to change one thing to another, so there will be many different paths within the strands to get her desired results. Debbie's next course of action would be then to use divination and alteration to find out who was attacking her and defend herself. Whoever did that was going to pay. It was not right to use magic on someone who did not want it casted on them. She knew at least whoever did this will pay dearly for it. Debbie tried to disconnect herself but could not. In fact, the strands' bond became even stronger to her. She could not believe that some wizard was lurking in the shadows waiting for the right moment to attack her. How could she have left her guard down? Debbie went to go to her mirror and could not move. Whoever was doing this was very powerful, and she knew now she was at their mercy. Debbie found herself floating, and she knew that was a bad omen. Debbie felt herself growing. She looked down at her expanding arms and saw them getting hairier. Her fingernails shrank and lost the polish on them. Her breasts retreated back into her body. She knew she was becoming a man. Oh shit, she thought. She made the simple mistake of not checking if there was a wild magic storm before casting the spell. She relaxed and thought to just write out the end of her spell, then change herself back when the storm was over. Debbie just sat back and enjoyed the show of her gaining a new body. The lady who was getting a taste of her own medicine did desire that she got a hot body, but her wish was not granted. She saw her gut grow into a little beer belly. Looking in the mirror, Debbie saw her face matched her fingers, pudgy. Then to top it off, she had a goatee. She hated facial hair. She knew a man who was out of shape, like her body was, thought a goatee would make their face look slim. Her relief was short-lived, for she quickly found out this was not caused by a wild magic storm. A wild magic storm would not cause her mindset to change in the manner it did. She started to have male sexual urges. She could not control her thoughts and was becoming a passenger in her own body. A wild magic storm would only cause the spell to backfire on her. She started to panic as she started to feel her connection to magic being yanked from her towards Glenn. All her knowledge and experience in casting was flowing out of her and to her husband. She had no idea what was going on. What made it worse was she could not control her thoughts. All she could think of was sex. How she wanted to be with a woman right now. This phantom attacker then sent her a mental glimpse of her husband via divination, and she hated that she was aroused by it. Poor Glenn was a woman and looked like a supermodel. His legs were long and his skirt was short. He had doe eyes and pouty lips. His blouse showed his ample bosom. Debbie was getting angry for whoever was attacking her was involving a mortal in their battle. Casting a spell with ill intent or results on a mortal was another wizard high crime. She did not see the irony of her being mad about that, for this started by her committing the same crime on the love of her life. The new man saw his husband walking up the steps seductively. Debbie hated that she knew what that walk meant. Glenn was on the prowl for a man. She also knew that her husband was ovulating for one simple reason that would do the most damage to her. If he had sex as a woman now, he would be stuck for the next 9 months as one while he was pregnant. Being in a female body for that long would have permanent adverse effect on his persona. He would yearn to be a woman. While walking up the stairs, Glenn was bewildered. The confused ex-man knew she never wanted to be a woman, yet so enjoyed that she was one now. All she could think of was to find a man to give this smoking body a test drive. The vixen knew the thoughts were wrong yet wanted more of them. It was just so delicious to her thinking of what she would do with a man, any man. Glenn had to find his wife to get some help from herself. With each step, the help the new woman wanted went from how to get out of this predicament to help getting a man to have a wild time with tonight. Glenn opened the door to their bedroom, and to her surprise her wife was nowhere to be found. Instead, she saw an average-looking man. The sex-hungry woman quickly thought where was her wife, but then started to check out the man. That stranger was no way a stud, but he will do for what he wanted right now. Glenn hoped at least the man's package made up for his lack of looks. Glenn started to seductively walk over to his prey. Debbie went to say no, get away, and the words came out, yes, come here you sexy thing. Debbie was in horror, for he knew he was going to make his husband be torn about who he was for the rest of his life. The former wizard could not help Glenn, for he lost his connection to magic. Debbie cursed himself for delaying getting ready until past the last moment. The person with perfect hindsight cursed himself for getting mad at her then husband for wanting his wife to keep the schedule they made. If she was ready when she to be, this would not have happened. Glenn got close to Debbie and was about to kiss the stranger when she was frozen and the average-looking man gained control of her new male body. It was so clumsy to him. Then Debbie saw her dad in the room. Her dad was Vincent the archmage. He looked like any typical athletic male in his early 60s, but he was over 10,000 years old. He lost track of his age, for once someone hits 1,000, birthdays do not mean that much them anymore. Thank you, Dad, for showing up, Debbie said. Vincent responded with, if I was you, son, I would not be so happy seeing me here. I was in the middle of a great game of spades with my buddies, when I felt a ward I cast go off, so I came to investigate what caused the spell to go off. Debbie rolled her eyes, for she did not think her dad's joke of calling her son was the proper for this situation. She was under attack and needed his help, and he wanted to get a laugh. Dad, this is not the time to joke around. I know my husband and I are under attack. They took my power and gave them to Glenn, and he is now a woman. Vincent said I was not joking, son. I can't call you Debbie, that is not a name for a man. Look at you, you are a man now, so you are my son, not my daughter. You do not have access to magic to change back, so get used to being my son. You are also sadly mistaken, son. You are not under attack. You set off a ward I casted on your husband when you tried to turn him into a woman. I am proud of it. See, the ward allowed your spell to take effect on your husband, but at the same time did the same thing to you while giving your magic to him. I also added for it to make the situation worse. It did so by making you some of the worst thoughts you had about men and also making Glenn into the worst you believe men think about women. I love the growth in AI spell. The spell itself will figure out the best way to accomplish your intent of it. So you were not under attack, you did this to him and yourself. This is the headache I warn you about if you ever casted a spell on your husband without his knowledge. Debbie was mad at her father for doing this to them and asked, "How dare you?" Her asking that question got under her father's skin. The room darkened and got cold, his pupils became flames and the wizard's stature grew when he said, "How dare I? No, how dare you? You broke one of the wizard's high laws of casting a spell on an unwilling mortal, which was to cause harm. Casting that transformation spell on your unwilling husband and having him become a lady would have lingered in him for weeks. He would have had the urge to dress as a woman and be treated as one. You were not around before we made that law, but you do know why. We made it for mortals almost killed off magic in this world. Some of us toyed with them and they started to worship us as the new gods. Then when we became too cruel, they revolted and hunted most of us down. I do not blame them. In fact, you know that I helped them. You also treated magic as a toy, you did not respect magic. You used it for purely personal gain, to get some amusement. You were running late and did not like your husband brought it up. You knew when you were going out and should have been ready. I told you marrying a mortal is hard. They are always on the go compared to us. We have all the time in the world. A day for them is like a year for us. Time is precious to them and that is a lesson we should learn from them, so now you reap the rewards of breaking one of the high laws of magic. You lost your connection to magic and will live your days out as a mortal male while your husband gained magic. It is fitting that you will be a male. You will now not have to complain about having to put on makeup. Glenn was heartbroken to hear that his wife did this to her. How could his wife go back on her word, and just because she was annoyed that he brought up they were running late again? He did not realize that his wife was that petty and looked down on mortals like they were just playthings. Debbie thought that her father was overreacting. How can you do this to your daughter? Vincent exhaled in annoyance. He was annoyed that his daughter forgot that one of his many titles was the betrayer. It was the honorific which he was the proudest of out of all he had. It was proof that he was about his ethics and morals above anything else. This was for Vincent took up with the side of the mortals when they overthrew the new gods. He killed his own father, his eldest son, his first wife, and still has one of his brothers locked in the lowest level of the abyss. He has no fidelity to anyone or anything, only to what is right. Warmth and light returned to the room and Vincent resorted back to his old, less threatened form as he said, "You have to get used to being my son, so quit referring to yourself as my daughter. I did this to a fellow wizard. You being my child does not give you the privilege of being above the law. You are lucky that you are my child, for if not, the judicators would have been on this case. They tend to surveil wizards who are married to mortals to make sure they do not use magic on them. You are getting off easy." Debbie could not believe that the judicators would have her under surveillance. She was one of them. She is just on a sabbatical to be married to the man she loved. They surely would not have kept a close eye on her. Dad, quit trying to see what you did in the best light. They would not have watched over me. They know me and trust me. I wish you would have trusted me like they do. It hurts you casted a spell to protect my husband from me. Vincent responded to his son's grievance. I did trust you, that is why I put the ward on him. I trust, you being you, that sooner or later you would have cast a spell on you. Me casting the ward on him did not hurt you, you getting caught and having to pay the price does. You also know that the judicators would have come down on you hard. They love to make an example of one of their own. Now get ready to meet your new wife. Don't worry, I am giving both of you back your old personalities. I just hope your new wife is not mad at you. Glenn heard his father-in-law scolding his wife. He could not believe what he was hearing. His wife was going to cast a spell on him. He hated magic, how it could control others. His wife was going to make him a puppet for a night, for she was upset about him bringing up they were running late. After Vincent said those words, Glenn could move. You saw the seductive look on his face quickly go to one of anger. How could you, Debbie? Glenn stopped talking for he was startled by the new sound of his voice. It was too high. He hated the sound of his voice now. It also felt strange to hear a foreign voice come out of his mouth. Debbie was trying to find the right words to answer that question. She knew just saying she was mad about always being hurried made her do it would just make Glenn madder. She went with the short and simple answer, Glenn, it was a mistake. Glenn hated that answer so much. Hearing his new voice did not bother him. A mistake? No, that was not a mistake. A mistake is misspelling a word, thinking a meeting is at the wrong time, calling a friend by his brother's name. What you did was wrong. You promised to me you would never cast a spell on me when I found out you were a purveyor of the mystic arts, and you went back on your word. Debbie said I meant doing so was a mistake. It is just you get on me for how long it takes to do my makeup and get ready. I wanted you to see why. Glenn said, I do not get on you for that. I get on you for always waiting too long to get ready and making us late. To me it shows you have no respect for other people's time. Plus you could have just used magic to do your makeup. Instead you made me a woman. Vincent interjected, daughter-in-law, you are wrong about my new son. He is like most wizards, he does not have the same concept of time as you. We do not age, so time is not something for us to be concerned about. You need to take that into account. Being an hour late is like being on time to us. Glenn turned to Vincent. I am not your daughter-in-law, I am Glenn, a man. And why don't you or my wife turn me back now? Vincent said, have you not been paying attention? Your husband cannot turn you back, he is immortal now. Me, I will not cast a spell in your house unless I need to. I am not turning you back, for you can do it yourself. You are a very powerful wizard now. See, Vincent knew that he had to show Glenn how powerful the new wizard was in magic. The Kagi mage shot a little bolt of lighting towards his daughter-in-law, and instantly the newest sorcerer put up a shield of magical energy to disperse the attack. Glenn, even with hating magic, thought that was cool. He knew he would never like it, but he did honor its power and how amazing it was. Glenn said, I will do it later, I have more important concerns right now, like what to do with my wife. Debbie, you know that I would have hated being a woman, yet you still did this to me. Little did Glenn know that the delay in transforming himself back to a man was part of his desire to stay a woman. His statement of having more important concerns was a way of his subconscious putting off doing so. He would start to think of changing back less and less and putting it off until the desire to be a man would be no more. Debbie was still trying to defend her casting that spell. It was not for she thought she was right, she now knew she was wrong. It was that she did not want this to be any bigger of a fight between her and her husband. Debbie said, Glenn, part of the spell was making sure you enjoyed it. I wanted to make sure you did not have a bad night out with our friends. Glenn's anger grew and Debbie realized that she just dug herself a deeper hole to get out of. Glenn shot back, oh, you were going to make me a puppet so I enjoy whatever you want me to be. That would have taken away my free will. That is just sick. You are a sick person. Don't call me sick, it was a stupid thing Debbie shouted back in mid-sentence. Glenn told her husband to zip it, his lips mended together. Vincent did not see this outcome, he cursed himself for not using a little divination to better know this situation. It served him right for being too arrogant and thinking he knew exactly how this was going to unfold. He should have known that Glenn would not hesitate to use magic on Debbie after she did the same to him. Vincent did not want to escalate the situation, so he asked nicely for Glenn to allow Debbie to talk again. Glenn paid no attention to Vincent as she was looking in her dresser drawer while Vincent gave his polite request. Vincent asked Glenn to pay attention to him, to no avail. Vincent considered his next course of action. He would be going back on what he just said about casting a spell in Glenn's house, but he was left with no choice. Glenn said, found it, as Vincent finished casting the hold spell. Vincent wondered what Glenn was talking about and found out as soon as he could not move, it was some sort of protective charm. A necklace of spell turning was a gift to Glenn from his mother-in-law. It made the wearer immune to magic and redirected the spell right back at the caster. It would have been sought out by all users of magic if it did not have the drawback of also blocking the wearer from casting a spell also. Glenn felt the magic bounce off of him and looked right at direction it came from. He saw Vincent frozen. Glenn was furious. "Oh Vincent, you only cast magic in my house only when you have to. It seems to me you do it only when it fits your wants. You had no need to cast that spell, yet you did. I hate magic. I hate how people like you two use it to get what you want, to amuse yourselves. I hate how it makes people like you two feel like they have the right to bend others to their will. I hate that it makes people like both of you feel more important than normals. Now I just have to decide what to do. I need to make sure you are never able to find me, for I hate to see what you will do to me for the transgressions I just took. You are petty people, so you will want revenge." When Debbie heard her husband use the pejorative normals, she knew her actions were going to have much deeper ramifications than she could have thought. Normals was a derogatory term, for it implied wizards were special and above mortals. A mortal was normal compared to how special someone with magic was. They deserve to be treated as less, for most people do not cherish what is normal. Her inconsiderate action caused a rift between them was wider and deeper that she knew. Her husband truly believed that she thought he was less than her. He might never be open for her to prove him wrong, it was a case of her not thinking. Being tired of hearing the same complaint from him, and instead of trying to fix it, Debbie took out her annoyance on him. As Glenn was talking, Debbie's mom, Miriam, appeared. Miriam ignored Glenn and, while looking at Debbie, nodding her head like they were having a conversation. They were having one telepathically, and Debbie was filling her mom into her account of what has happened. Glenn asked, "Is it a high crime for a wizard to knock before they came into a person's home?" Miriam and Vincent's bad habit of literally always dropped in without notice also annoyed him. He hated how his in-laws would actually just materializing in the room. Today he found it aggravating, for they were running late for a night out with friends. Those two always put themselves in front of others. Then again, he knew he should have expected that, for they are wizards. Miriam's voice had a tone of disappointment in it when she said, "Glenn, if you were more patient this would not have happened. You should not have been rushing my baby girl to get going. Now, look what has happened, for you could not wait to see your friends. You need to learn not to be in a rush. I do not blame my daughter for wanting to teach you a lesson, but she should not have done it this way. That is the only reason why I am going to change you back now." Glenn just shook his head at what Miriam said. Her words, trying to justify Debbie casting that spell, just reinforced him, knowing he had to get away from them. They do not see him as an equal if they think he was wrong for not wanting to be late for a night out with friends. "Miriam, I need to be more patient. Really, we were going to be over in half an hour late for leaving when I called up to your daughter. Also, you are just like my wife and your husband, you put yourself above me. You just had one of those telepathic chats with Debbie right now. You said you would never do that in front of me. You all do not know how to keep your word. I am done with all of you." Glenn started to go to the door. He thought his escape was going to be easy. It was not. His talisman does not stop spell from working on object around him. As he walked to the door, he saw a brick wall formed to block the doorway. The woman who needed to escape then looked at the windows and saw bars on them. After Glenn turned around, Miriam said, "Dear, I am sorry that I went back on my word, and also sorry about keeping you here. I am doing all this for I need to know the situation. You are a hot, stunning woman. My daughter is a man with his mouth mended shut, and my husband is frozen. What should I have done? Now drop the necklace and let me change you back. What you should have done was talk to me. You just looked past me and acted like I was not here, or worse, that my thoughts did not matter. No, I will not drop the necklace. I do not trust any of you right now." Miriam just looked at Debbie while her female son-in-law was answering her. Glenn figured out they were having a telepathic conversation. "Stop it. If you have anything to say, Miriam, say it out loud. Also pay attention to me when I am speaking." Miriam said, "Sorry, but that time I was not having a conversation with my daughter. I was divinating into her mind to see what happened between you two. I am sorry about what she did. I thought that I raised her better. That is why I took her word about what happened here tonight. She was wrong, Debbie. I am so disappointed in you. Do you mind if I undo your spell on Debbie so we can all talk like adults?" Miriam's question made Glenn laugh to herself. The next youngest person there was 270 years her senior, but she was the only adult in the room. The other three are self-centered and immature in her eyes. Glenn said, "Go ahead, you will do it anyways." As soon as his mouth was able to open, Debbie started to tell Layan to his husband, "Don't you dare ever do that to me again. You do not cast." Miriam sternly interrupted her daughter, "You shut up. All of this happened for you casted a spell on your husband. Now Glenn, just drop the talisman and I will change you back. Then, after we talk for about an hour, I will leave you go in peace." Glenn was listening to Miriam, for she did put her daughter in her place. That gave Debbie the window of opportunity to yank the talisman out of his wife's hand. As the amulet fell to the ground, Debbie said, "Now Mom, change us back and give me my powers." Miriam did take the opportunity to change Glenn back to his old self. Even with being a powerful spellcaster, Glenn was no match for Miriam when he tried to counter the spell. Her weaving was too quick for Glenn's muscle memories to match. Glenn might have the knowledge, but the mage apprentice with too much power just did not have the instincts to go along with the power. Those would come with practice. As Debbie saw the sorceress become a sorcerer, he looked down at his hand, wanting to watch himself become a witch again. No change in the appearance. Debbie also could not see or feel the magic flowing back into her. She did not feel that connection to the great beyond which made her feel whole. What was going on here? Debbie thought. As Glenn reverted back to his true self, he felt like he was missing out on the chance of being who he should have always been. He could not believe that his mother-in-law took away his true identity so quickly after him discovering her. After Glenn was fully himself, Miriam casted the Gordian knot spell on him. It was a great spell to use on novice mages to keep them from casting magic. It tied the strands of magic around them in knots which are almost impossible to unravel. All the Queen of the Ebony Castle had to do was renew the spell a couple of times until Glenn lost that magical urge to be a woman. Glenn was now preoccupied with untying the untieable. Debbie could not believe that she was still a mortal man. "Mom, I told you to change me back also." Miriam again shook her head in disapproval at her daughter. "Debbie, you never tell me what to do. You should know that I was not going to do that. Your father, the Herald the Dryocta, the head of the Council of Mages, the ruler of wizards, made a decree. I swore fidelity to keeping his decrees centuries before you were born, and I made a vow to stand beside him as his wife, so I am not going to change you back." As this was going on, Vincent was getting a little annoyed that everyone forgot about his predicament. The archmage was in the unfamiliar position of not being the center of attention. Even with being irritated by having to wait, he did like the fact he was reminded he needed to be humble sometimes. The Wizard of Wizards, being a flesh statue, gave him time to contemplate how much Glenn hated magic and how that could help an issue he has been having. His daughter is not the only mage which has forgotten about the purge mankind almost did on magic and why. Too many mages have been casting spells on mortals for their amusement. Vincent needed some new blood in the Judicators, and Glenn might just be the right person. Yeah, a person who has a passion against those crimes would be the right person to hunt down the perpetrators of those offensives. Miriam laughed when she saw her husband and quickly dispersed the hold spell on him. Vincent smiled back and said, "Took you long enough. Believe it or not, there was more pressing needs at the moment than you, so you had to wait your turn. Plus, we finally got silence from you running your mouth. I know why, my queen, and you making me wait shows who really rules all mages. You just have me as a figurehead, so you do not have to deal with the paperwork." Debbie was not in the mood for those two playful banter. They can be all lovey-dovey later. Right now her dad needed to set things back to normal. "You two quit playing around. Someone needs to change me back. I hated being a man when I had to do so while I was training and do not want to be one now. All wizards have to spend some time as the opposite sex. This is for each sex has a different connection to magic. If they experience magic from both sexes, then a wizard will have a better understanding of how magic really works. The better the understanding, the more powerful the spell would be." Vincent and Miriam said simultaneously, "You should have thought of that before you turned your husband into a woman." Ha 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 ha. "Jinx, no talking. Then the two lovebirds gave each other an affectionate kiss. Debbie was becoming mad. This was not funny to her, she was a man. An average-looking one to top it off. Come on, quit it you two. This is not a joke and I have learned my lesson. I will take the eminent oath about casting magic on my husband. The eminent oath was a Hayes spell that only can be casted on oneself and has to be done on their own free will. The person becomes magically obliged to follow the letter of the oath taken. It is dangerous, for no matter what they cannot break their word. If not worded right, it can corrupt the meaning of the oath. There has been cases where magic users has given this oath as a sign of their love. The love has become an obsession and they became controlling and abusive towards the person given it to when they felt the love was not returned in kind. Vincent became serious and said, Debbie, you are stuck as a man for at least another hour, I think. Neither of us are going to change you back. There is only one mage in the multiverse which will do so, and he is now trying to unweave a knot around him. The rest of them will not chance breaking in decree I made. Now Glenn has not sworn allegiance to me, so he could without repercussions. Debbie felt defeated, even if her husband did change her back. There was no way he was going to give her back her power. The ex-mage knew that in Glenn's eyes she abused magic when she casted that spell on him. He also thought like a mortal and would not take the chance of her getting payback for him mending her lips shut. Maybe her dad would permit her to be trained again in the arcane arts. If you are not going to make Glenn give me back what is rightfully mine, then at least let me become a wizard again. I want and need that connection to magic. As soon as the want-to-be student saw the grin on her dad's face, she knew even with getting what she wanted, she was going to hate it. Debbie, I was already planning on having you learn magic again. I have a teacher in mind. I will talk more later once your husband loses his obsession to be a woman. Glenn was oblivious to the conversation which was taking place. The warlock was so frustrated at the knots in magic. He felt like Tantalus, his goal of becoming the woman he should be was just out of his reach. It was taunting him as he spent more time and effort in trying to obtain the unobtainable. Then all of a sudden, Glenn lost his obsession with becoming a woman. Even with knowing that magic was the cause of that desire, he still believed it was genuine until all the magic residue was gone from his soul. He quit trying to break those knots and said, Miriam, thank you for stopping me. I would have lived my life as someone who I am not. Now are you going to keep your words and let me leave in peace, or will you or Vincent try to follow me? Debbie said, hold up, you are not leaving until you at least change me back to who I am. No, I am leaving now. Debbie. I will come back in a day or two to change you. I think you need to learn a lesson about not making people into puppets. Vincent used a simple divination spell to detect if Glenn was telling the truth and was happy his son-in-law was. The new mage, not being vindictive, reassured Vincent that he picked the right person to offer a new role in the Judicators. Glenn, before you leave, please answer this question. Would you like to go around stopping wizards from casting magic on mortals? Glenn said, of course, I would. I hate magic being casted on people who are unwilling. Then hear me out, my son-in-law. I want to make you a judicator. You will have a special assignment to go after all mages and other supernatural beings who cast magic on mortals. You will only answer to me. You will of course be assigned a junior judicator to help you. You will have to take the one I pick. Also, you will have to train them in the theory of magic while they will train you in the practical use of magic. You have all the knowledge, you just do not have the experience. Take your time and think about it. You know where to find me when you have an answer. Glenn jumped at the chance of as quick as a man lost in the tundra would to be next to a campfire and said yes. Debbie really hated this. She knew who was going to be her trainer in magic. No, I will not do it. Then my daughter, you will not be trained in magic. Fine, I do not understand why you are doing this to me. Here is why. You have been foolish and treated magic as a trick. Glenn here is wise and treats magic as a tool. You need to learn that lesson again. Many of us, me included, need to be reminded of it. I just did it when I went against my word casting a spell in your home. Your mom did it when she did not have the decency to talk with you in front of Glenn. I am about to wage my own personal war against mages who had been lax about respecting mortals. I do not want another purge of magic to happen. I am not going to be forced to kill my blood again in the name of what is right. This time man has the technology to destroy the world I sworn to protect. I am not going to have that happen on my watch. That short speech changed Debbie's heart. Glenn, I am so sorry. It was not that I was not thinking. It was that I was inconsiderate of you. I should had never have tried to turn you into a woman. Please turn me back now. I understand if you do not until you think I learned my lesson, but I have. Glenn was wise and knew his wife saw the errors of her way and wondered how to turn her back. It just came to him. He saw exactly how to unweave the spell on her. He found it neat that he was just able to manipulate the world. Debbie ran and hugged her husband, with tears of remorse in her eyes, said, I am so sorry. I should have just been ready when I said I would be. I will never put off getting ready until the last moment again. Then she smiled when she figured out her husband will only age if and when he wanted to. We will be together forever now. I will have my true love with me for time eternal. Glenn was shocked at his response to hearing he was going to be with Debbie until the end of time. Instead of panicking thinking their love might fade, he knew it would only get stronger. He smiled and wiping the tears for the person who blood flows in his veins like his in hers and said, my love, we had a fight. I know you are sorry, it was a mistake and I should have seen it that way. I know you will do better at being ready on time. I would love us learning what we need about magic together, with each other being the other's both teacher and student. Vincent said, oh Glenn, after a week you will not have to worry about Debbie running late because of makeup for a while. You two will be swapping bodies. Glenn, training in magic means you need to experience magic as the other gender.